Hey, so I'm back again. This is episode 10, and this is starting 101. And if you're running a side business, if you're running a small business or something like that, then you're gonna want to stick around because today it's basically like I was thinking about this and I realized it's like one of the biggest kept secrets. And it shouldn't be a secret, but it's one of the biggest kept secrets that keeps the big businesses, the big corporations and the small businesses apart as far as like them being able to predictably look at it and get results. So that's what I'm going to cover in today's video. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm JP from jpadamsonline.com, and this is Starting 101, and it's me documenting essentially the process of just coming up with a vague idea of wanting to start a business and going through that entire process in public to kind of like show the steps and my thought process and everything from the seed of wanting to start something to what it's going to turn into. Now, I'm committing to doing 101 episodes of these things. So you will see as it turns and as it changes how it forms. But this framework that I'm basically talking about is something that I'm stretching out in time so that you see the results. But if you want to see it in more detail, then you can go to jpadamsonline.com/intent and check it out. And it'll actually walk you through it. But anyway, let's get into it. So, what's this big secret that's keeping the small guys, like essentially dooming small businesses to failure? So, I think right before I get into it, it's kind of like a little bit of a story. So, I know someone that's very close to me. Um, and they have one brand, but under that brand they have two businesses. And in those two businesses that they have, one of them was totally set up and equipped to run essentially, something that you could do completely online or something like that, and the other one is a physical store in a physical location. And when all this stuff happened with the pandemic and everything else, it really really smashed their business hard. And I mean, I empathize with them, but as I sat and thought about it and looked at it, and I was like, man, if they had known this one thing, it probably would have helped them to prepare and they would have been able to last a little bit longer than they did. Because I mean, a lot of businesses, like by the first month they were in trouble. So it's like, and that's what I'm going to cover today. So as I've been thinking through the process of coming up with the idea, deciding, what, who do I want to focus on, what market and everything else, and um looking at what I was going to be offering and putting some numbers in place and constraints, one idea stayed in the back of my mind the whole time, which is I'm trying to start a business, right? It's a side business, it's a side hustle, but it's a business. Now, the reason that this is so important to me right now is because I knew this. Like, I knew this one detail, but I didn't apply it, right? I applied it at work. I applied it, at the startup that I was working at, and they will make sure, they will bring in consultants, they will send you to training, they will do whatever it takes to make sure you do not forget this one simple fact. And the one fact is this: business, any business, it doesn't matter what you do, it's a system. And each one of the major parts of the business is a subsystem of the whole. And if you know that and you understand how that works, then you're able to kind of like make sure that you're handling what happens and what comes at you. So one of the things that people take and don't really get is that if you start to look at your business as just like numbers and this and that, then you're approaching it in a cold manner. But it's like, no, the business itself is a set of systems. You're not supposed to be approaching systems with, I don't know, warm and fuzzy feelings. You're supposed to be approaching systems with a calculation in a very calculated manner. Now, how you deal with your customers, how you deal with your people, what's your motivation, that is something that you bring the human component to it. But the system itself, That's just the system. So essentially, the way that you start to look at your business is to apply what's called systems thinking. And systems thinking is just a way of looking at the world in such a way that you abstract away some of the details so that you can see the component pieces. And by looking at those component pieces, you can then start to say, what are the inputs that go into this? What are the outputs that I expect out of this? So that you can then tie it all together in your entire business. Now, if you look at the five parts of a business, I've mentioned it before, but it's a concept that was popularized by a guy named Josh Kaufman. And it's basically that every business is made out of five parts. And you can see it if you look, right? There's the marketing, there's the sales, there's the value delivery, there's the finance, and there's the value creation. Now, usually you start with value creation, right? What value are you going to create and how are you going to get that out there? Then you go into marketing. How do I get people to know this thing exists? Then you go into the sales. How do I get them to give me money for this thing? Then value delivery. How do I give them the thing they just paid for? And then finance. How do I make sure that there's enough money flowing in such that I can keep making this thing so that I can keep that cycle going? So that's a business. That's that cycle. And if you look at that as a system, right? Well, the initial input is effort, money, and time, right? Depending on if you have money, then you can buy time, but it's really like thought, effort, money, and time. And so you put that in and you create some piece of value for somebody. Now you got to go market, bring attention in, bring traffic in. If you're at the if you had a physical store, you got to get people through the door, right? If you had a something online, well, then you got to get traffic some other way. But that's really the thing that you have to understand is that those things that change, yeah, sure, the people that come in your store every day might change, but that's a variable. And that variable is a fixed thing, meaning like I know that I can dial up traffic and tell you this is what would happen to my business, as in the money. Like you got to make money. If you're not making money, it's not a business, right? It's a hobby or hustle or something else. But if I dial this thing that I think is crucial to my business down, what is it going to do to the rest of the numbers and the rest of the system? And then you can start to think about, okay, what other systems do I have? Backup systems, right? Do I have failover systems? So if this thing stops working, do I have another thing that I can dial up in order to make sure that the whole business keeps going? But that's the one secret. And it seems like people that are running small businesses, either they don't get access to it because, when you're just flying by the seat of your pants and saying, you know what, I'm going to make this happen, then you start. And I advocate for that. You should start because you know what? I'm basically like, use the resource that you have on hand and get the outcomes and just focus on what matters. But you start. But once you start, you do need to start to look at the subsystems of your business as a whole and know that those things have variables and controls, like knobs you can dial up and dial down. If you can't figure out a way to dial it down, then or dial it up, then the most you can do is get lucky. And you don't want to be lucky in business. You want to be predictably successful so that when something crazy like this happened with the world, then at least you can anticipate for it. And I mean, a lot of businesses didn't even last 2 weeks when this thing happened. So, but essentially that's it. Looking at your business like a system and applying systems thinking to those components so you know your inputs and your outputs and how it all fits together is the one thing that if you don't make that shift in your business, it'll basically fail. And that's the parts that I've been thinking about now is what are the component parts of this business that I'm starting, and what do I need to do in order to get those parts flowing? And also looking at what parts am I weak at? And so if you're looking at your business as a whole and you're trying to either if you're not clear on pieces or if you're not, sure about what all the parts are, or if you just don't have that clarity on where your people are going to come from, what the changes they're going to get, what transformation or whatever, then I would say, you know what, you might want to definitely check out JP Adams Online /intent, because the intent framework is just meant to help you get clarity. And it's the same framework that I would have used to figure all this out. I would have done this in one afternoon in my office by myself, but I wanted to show the entire thought process, expand it out, and then also show that you can contract that down in order to get results faster. But thanks for tuning in. I mean, just take a look. You can Google it if you want, but systems thinking is a thing that is key to succeeding in any business. And that's the part that I'm at now, is dialing in the systems in the business that I'm starting and basically looking at how those component parts are going to work. And so in the future, as we go forward, I'm going to start talking more about the individual pieces and what I'm doing in those areas, And I'm sure the first phase is going to be value definition, not even value creation, but defining what is valuable out there. But thanks for tuning in. Again, I'm JP from jpadamsonline.com. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at JP Adams Online, and I'll see you tomorrow.